The stars looked cold and distant through the viewport of the research vessel Harmony's Edge. Captain Lee Do-yun stood with his hands behind his back, watching the empty space ahead. His crew had been traveling for 3 weeks without finding anything interesting, just rocks and gas clouds and more empty space. "Captain," called Communications Officer Park Soo-jin from her station. "I'm picking up something strange. It's big and it's moving slow." Do-hyun walked over to look at her screen. The readings showed a massive ship, much larger than anything humans had ever built. But something was wrong with it. The ship was spinning slowly and pieces were breaking off from its hull. "What kind of ship is that?" asked Navigator Cho Min-seok. Do-hyun felt his stomach drop as he recognized the dark shape on the screen. "That's a Vorthak dreadnought." The bridge went quiet. Everyone knew about the Vorthak. They were the galaxy's most feared warriors. Their black shells could stop plasma fire. They had 4 arms that could swing weapons faster than human eyes could follow. They worked together like a hive mind in battle. For 300 years they had conquered world after world. No one had ever beaten them in a fair fight. "Sir," said Cho Min-seok quietly, "we should leave. Now." Do-hyun stared at the damaged ship. Pieces of metal were floating away from it like leaves in the wind. Emergency lights blinked red along its. "Follows him how many life signs?" he asked. Park Soo-jin checked her instruments. "About 200, but Captain, some of them are very small. Much smaller than adult Vorthak." "Children," whispered Dr. Park Min-ji from the science station. She had joined the bridge when she heard about the contact. "Those are Vorthak children." The bridge crew looked at each other with worried faces. Chief Security Officer Nam Ji-hoon stepped forward. "Sir, this could be a trap. The Vorthak are known for their tricks." Do-hyun studied the readings again. The ship was clearly dying. Its power levels were dropping every minute. Whatever had happened to it, the damage was real. "Min-ji, what do you know about Vorthak biology?" Dr. Park Min-ji pulled up data on her tablet. "Not much. They're very secretive about their young. We know they lay eggs and the children hatch after 6 months. But we've never seen a live Vorthak child. Because they kill anyone who gets that close," said Nam Ji-hoon. "Not today," said Do-hyun. "Soo-jin, open a channel to that ship." "Captain, no," said Cho Min-seok. "They'll kill us all." Do-hyun ignored him. "This is Captain Lee Do-hyun of the human vessel Harmony's Edge. Vorthak ship, do you need assistance?" Static filled the bridge for long seconds. Then a deep voice answered in broken human language. "Human ship. You come to watch Vorthak die?" "We came to help if we can." Harsh laughter came through the speakers. "Humans help Vorthak?" "Impossible. We are enemies." "Right now you're just people in trouble," said Do-hyun. "We have medical supplies and doctors. Will you accept our help?" More static. Then the voice spoke again, but this time it sounded different. Tired. Sad. "I am Jextar the Bone Render. I have killed 300 humans in battle. Why would you help me?" "Because your children are dying," said Do-hyun simply. The silence that followed felt heavy. Dr. Park Min-ji looked at the captain with surprise. Nam Ji-hoon shook his head but said nothing. Finally, Jextar spoke again. "Our young ones are sick. The ship's medical bay is damaged. We cannot help them." There was a pause. "If you try to board my ship, my warriors will kill you. This I promise." "Then, come to us," said Do-hyun. "Bring your sick children to our medical bay. Our doctor will treat them." "You would let Vorthak warriors onto your ship?" "If they come in peace, yes." Dr. Park Min-ji stepped closer to the captain. "Sir, I should tell you something. We don't know anything about Vorthak medicine. I might not be able to help them." "But you'll try?" asked Do-hyun. "Of course." Do-hyun turned back to the communications panel. "Jextar, we're sending over our shuttle. It can carry 6 of your people. Bring the sickest children first. You are either very brave or very stupid, human captain. Maybe both." An hour later, the shuttle returned. Nam Ji-hoon met it in the docking bay with 4 security officers. They all carried stun weapons, but Do-hyun had ordered them not to draw. unless attacked first. The shuttle door opened and Zextar stepped out. He was bigger than any Vorthak in the human military files, nearly 3 meters tall with 4 muscled arms ending in clawed hands. His shell was black as space with red markings that probably showed his rank. Scars covered his face and arms from countless battles. But what surprised Nam Jihun most was what Zextar carried. In his upper 2 arms he held a small Vorthak child. The little one's shell was pale and cracked. It breathed in short, quick gasps. Behind Zextar came 2 other Vorthak warriors, each carrying sick children. The warriors moved carefully like they were carrying precious treasure. "Your doctor," said Zextar. "Where is she?" Dr. Park Minji stepped forward. The Vorthak warriors tensed and reached for their weapons, but Minji walked straight to Zextar and looked at the child in his arms. "How long has he been sick?" she asked. "She," corrected Zextar. 3 days. Her shell started cracking yesterday." Minji gently touched the child's forehead. The little Vorthak made a soft chirping sound. "She has a fever. Let's get her to the medical bay." What happened next would be remembered for generations. As they walked through the ship's corridors, human crew members stopped to look at the Vorthak warriors carrying their sick children. Instead of fear or anger, the humans showed concern and sadness. In the medical bay, Dr. Park Minji worked for hours. She ran tests and tried different medicines. The Vorthak warriors watched her, every move ready to fight if she hurt their young ones. But Minji worked with gentle hands and a soft voice. She sang quietly while she checked the children's vital signs. She smiled when one of them made a sound like purring. Zextar watched it all. This was not how enemies were supposed to act. These humans treated Vorthak children like they were their own. Late that night, as the first Vorthak child showed signs of getting better, something impossible happened. Zextar the Bone Render, who had never shown weakness in 300 battles, began to cry. Dr. Park Minji looked up from her work to see tears running down the great warrior's scarred face. "Why?" asked Zextar. "Why do you care about our young?" Minji smiled. "Because they're children. That's reason enough." Zextar stared at her for a long moment. Then he did something that no Vorthak had ever done before. He knelt down in front of a human and spoke words that would change the galaxy. "Human doctor, I have a request. It may be impossible, but I must ask." He looked at his sleeping child, then back at Minji. "Will you help us save our species?" Outside the medical bay, Captain Lee Do-hyun watched through the window. He had no idea that this moment would be remembered as the beginning of the greatest alliance in galactic history. All he knew was that sick children needed help, and humans had never been able to say no to that call. The Crimson Pact, as historians would later name it, began not with treaties or ceremonies but with a warrior's tears and a doctor's gentle hands. The news traveled fast across human space. Within 3 days, every major news network was showing the same impossible images. Vorthak warriors, the galaxy's most feared killers, standing peacefully in a human medical bay while their children received treatment. Ambassador Kim Seon-ho stood in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council on Terra Nova, watching the chaos unfold. Representatives from 12 different species shouted at each other in their native languages. The translation systems could barely keep up. "Order," called the council speaker, a tall blue alien from the Cerulean Republic. "We will have order." The Andromedian ambassador, his tentacles writhing with anger, pointed at Kim Seon-ho. "The humans have lost their minds. They're helping our greatest enemy." "The Vorthak have killed millions of our people," added the representative from the Kepler Alliance. "And now humans want to save their children? This is madness." Kim Seon-ho walked to the center of the hall. Around him, the curved walls rose, up like a giant bowl. Representatives from dozens of worlds looked down at him with fear and anger in their eyes. "Friends," he began, his voice calm and steady. "We have a chance to do something that has never been done before. We can turn our greatest enemy into an ally. By helping them breed more killers?" shouted the Andromedian. "By showing them a different way to live," replied Kim Seon-ho. "The Vorthak are not evil by choice. They are driven by biology to conquer and fight." But what if we could change that? Cerulean speaker leaned forward. Explain. Kim Siano activated a holographic display. It showed brain scans from the sick Vorthak children. Our doctors have discovered something remarkable. The plague affecting their young attacks the same neural pathways that control parental care. It's not just killing their children. It's destroying their ability to love them. The hall grew quiet. Representatives leaned forward to study the data. If we can cure this plague, continued Kim Sianho, we might change the Vorthak forever, make them capable of caring about others the way we do. And if you're wrong? Asked the Kepler representative. If you just make them stronger? Then we face the same enemy we've always faced. But if we're right, we might finally have peace. While the politicians argued, real work was happening far from Terra Nova. The research station New Busan floated in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. It had been built to study deep space phenomena, but now it served a different purpose. Dr. Park Minji walked through the expanded medical ward, checking on her patients. In the past week, they had treated 37 Vorthak children. 28 had recovered completely. The others were getting better every day. Doctor, called her colleague, Dr. Cho Yuna, from the laboratory. You need to see this. Minji hurried to the lab where Yuna was staring at a computer screen full of genetic data. I've been studying the plague samples, said Yuna. This isn't a natural disease. Someone created it. What do you mean? Yuna pulled up another screen. Look, at these protein structures, they're too perfect, too specific. This plague was designed to attack exactly those brain centers that control empathy and parental care in Vorthak biology. Minji felt cold. Someone wanted to make the Vorthak into perfect killers, or someone wanted to destroy them completely. Either way, this is biological warfare. Before Minji could respond, alarms began ringing throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red in the corridors. All personnel report to stations, came the announcement. We have incoming ships, unknown configuration. In the security center, Corporal Nam Ji-hoon watched his screens with growing worry. 3 large ships were approaching the station. They didn't match any known human or allied designs. Sir, called one of his officers, the lead ship is hailing us. Put it through. A face appeared on the main screen. It looked almost human, but with gray skin and completely black eyes. When it spoke, its voice was cold and emotionless. Human station. You will cease your treatment of the Vorthak specimens immediately. Surrender them to us, and you will not be harmed. Who are you? Asked Ji-hoon. We are the Zephyrians. The plague was our creation. You have interfered with our work. Ji-hoon's blood turned to ice. The Zephyrians were legends, stories told to scare children. Ancient beings who supposedly watched the galaxy from the shadows. Most people thought they were myths. Your work? He said. You created a disease to kill children? We created a tool to control a dangerous species. The Vorthak were becoming too numerous, too strong. The plague was meant to limit their population while making them more useful as weapons. In the medical bay, Dr. Park Minji heard the conversation over the intercom. She looked at the Vorthak children in their beds, sleeping peacefully after their treatments. Young Kethmore, barely 5 years old, was playing with toy blocks that Corporal Nam Ji-hoon had brought him. The little Vorthak looked up at her with large, curious eyes. Dr. Minji, are the bad ships going to hurt us? She knelt down beside his bed. No, little one, we won't let anyone hurt you. Hurt. But she wasn't sure how they could keep that promise. On the bridge of his dreadnought, Jextar received the news from his warriors aboard New Busan. The Zephyrians had revealed themselves. The ancient enemy had finally shown its face. Commander, said his second-in-command, we should retreat. The Zephyrians have weapons we cannot match. Jextar looked out at the human space station. Inside that small structure, human doctors were saving Vorthak children. They were risking their lives for young ones that were not even their own species. No, he said finally. We do not retreat. But sir, the humans have shown us something we forgot we could feel, said Jextar. They have shown us love for our children. I will not abandon them now. He opened a channel to all Vorthak ships in the system. Warriors, hear me. The humans heal our young. They ask nothing in return. They risk everything to save our future. Today, we fight not for conquest, but for protection. We fight to defend those who defend our children. Back on New Busan, Dr. Cho Yuna made a discovery that would change everything. As she analyzed the blood samples from recovered Vorthak children, she found something incredible. Minji, she called. The cure isn't just healing the children, it's changing them. What do you mean? The treated children show increased activity in the empathy centers of their brains. They're becoming more caring, more social. And look at this. She pointed to another readout. The change might be permanent. They might pass it on to their own children. Dr. Park Minji stared at the data. If this was true, then every Vorthak child they saved would grow up different from their parents, more caring, more peaceful, more human-like in their emotions. In his quarters, young Kethmore was teaching Corporal Nam Ji-hoon how to play a Vorthak children's game. It involved stacking colored stones in patterns. The boy's small claws were surprisingly gentle as he moved. The pieces. Like this, he said in careful human words. You build home for the little ones inside. Ji-hoon smiled. The little ones? The baby stones. They need protection. Kethmore looked up at him with serious eyes. Everyone needs protection. Even big scary warriors need protection sometimes. Ji-hoon felt a strange emotion in his chest. This child, whose species had been humanity's greatest enemy, was teaching him about protecting others. The Zephyrian ships moved closer to the station, their weapons charged with deadly energy, but they were not alone in space anymore. Vorthak. Dreadnoughts appeared from behind asteroids where they had been hiding. Human patrol ships jumped in from hyperspace. Even some ships from neutral species had come to watch the confrontation. The cold voice of the Zephyrian commander filled the communication channels. You cannot stop us, humans. We have controlled the galaxy's conflicts for millennia. The Vorthak plague was just one of our tools. Maybe you controlled things before, came Captain Lee Do-yun's voice from the Harmony's edge. But you never had to deal with humans and Vorthak working together. Ambassador Kim Seon-ho's voice joined the conversation from his ship. And you never had to explain to the galaxy why you've been secretly manipulating us all. As the tense standoff continued, Dr. Park Minji made a decision that would echo through history. She activated the station's communication system and broadcast on all frequencies. This is Dr. Park Minji aboard New Busan Station. I want every species in the galaxy to see something. The cameras switched to the children's ward. Vorthak young. Ones were playing with human children from the station's families. They shared toys and games. They helped each other with puzzles. When one little Vorthak scraped his knee, a human girl brought him a bandage. This is what we're fighting for, said Minji's voice, not territory or resources or power. We're fighting for the right of children to grow up in a galaxy where different species can care for each other. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched the broadcast. They saw something that had never existed before. Natural friendship between species that had been enemies since the dawn of space travel. The Zephyrian commander's voice cracked with anger. Enough! We will destroy this infection before it spreads. But as his ships prepared to fire, something unexpected happened. The neutral ships moved between the Zephyrians and the station. Species that had never allied with humans before now placed themselves in harm's way to protect the children inside. Young Kethmore looked up from his game and saw the ships through the viewport. Are those the protector ships? The morning after the standoff, New Busan Station buzzed with activity. The Zephyrian ships had retreated, but everyone knew they would return. Dr. Park Minji walked through the medical ward, watching her patients with new eyes. 3 months had passed since the first Vorthak children arrived. The changes in them were remarkable. They played games that required sharing and cooperation. They showed concern when others got hurt. Most amazing of all, they had begun forming friendships with the human children on the station. Dr. Minji, called a small voice. She turned to see Kethmore running toward her, his young shell gleaming with health. Behind him came Lucy Chen, the 7-year-old daughter of engineer Chen Weilin. Look what we made, said Lucy, holding up a drawing. It showed humans and Vorthak holding hands under a bright yellow sun. "We're going to be friends forever," added Kethmore, "even when we grow up big and scary." "You're not scary," said Lucy. "You're just different. Different is good." Dr. Park Minji knelt down to look at their drawing. "This is beautiful. Can I keep it?" "Yes," both children said together, then ran off to play. Nurse Han Soo-young approached with a medical tablet. "The latest test results are in. The neural changes in the treated children are becoming stronger, not weaker. Their empathy levels are now higher than baseline human children." "What does that mean for their future?" asked Minji. "It means they might be the most caring warriors the galaxy has ever seen." In the command center, Captain Lee Do-hyun studied tactical displays with his new Elijah. The great Vorthak warrior looked strange sitting at a human-sized console, but he had learned to use their equipment quickly. "The Zephyrian ships are gathering at the edge of the system," reported Navigation Officer Cho Min-seok. "Long-range sensors show at least 20 vessels. They're waiting for reinforcements," said Jextar. "The Zephyrians prefer to attack with overwhelming force." "How do we fight an enemy that's been manipulating galactic politics for thousands of years?" asked Do-hyun. "We don't fight them," said a new voice. Commander Ryu Taejin entered the command center, his uniform crisp despite the long journey from Earth. "We expose them." Do-hyun stood and saluted. "Commander, I wasn't expecting you." "The situation has changed, Captain. The Galactic Council has seen the broadcast from this station. They're asking hard questions about who really started the wars that have plagued our galaxy." Ryu Taejin looked at Jextar with respect. "Including the wars between humans and Vorthak." Jextar's four hands clenched into fists. "You believe the Zephyrians caused our conflicts?" "I think they've been pulling strings for a very long time," said Ryu Taejin. "And now they're desperate to hide their involvement." In the children's ward, something wonderful was happening. Young Vexhai, one of the sickest Vorthak children when she first arrived, was teaching human children how to sing a traditional Vorthak lullaby. Her voice was soft and melodic, nothing like the harsh war cries most humans associated with her species. "The words mean, 'safe in the nest of stars,'" she explained to her audience of human children. "My mother sang it to me when I was very small." "Can you teach us the movements too?" asked Tommy Rodriguez, the son of Chief Engineer Maria Rodriguez. Vexhai smiled, showing small white teeth. "Yes, like this." She moved her forearms in graceful patterns that matched the rhythm of the song. Soon, human children were trying to copy the movements with their two arms, laughing when they got confused. Vexhai patiently helped them, adjusting their positions with gentle touches. Dr. Cho Yuna watched from the doorway, recording everything on her tablet. These interactions were pure gold for her research into interspecies social bonding. "Remarkable," she whispered to herself. "They're not just adapting to each other. They're creating something entirely new." The peace was broken by alarms. Emergency lights flashed as the station's defensive systems activated. "All civilians to emergency stations," came the announcement. "This is not a drill." In the command center, the tactical display showed the approaching threat. 50 Zephyrian warships had jumped into the system, their formation perfect and deadly. "They're not here to talk this time," said Commander Ryu Taejin. The lead Zephyrian ship opened. Communications. The same cold face appeared on screen, but this time it looked angry. "Humans of New Busan Station, you have 48 hours to surrender all Vorthak specimens and cease your illegal medical experiments. Failure to comply will result in the complete destruction of your facility." "Specimens?" growled Jextar. "They speak of our children like laboratory animals." Captain Lee Do-hyun stepped forward. "This is Captain Do-hyun. We have no specimens here. We have patients under medical care and children who are guests on our station. We will not surrender them to anyone." "Then you have chosen death," said the Zephyrian commander. "Your primitive alliance cannot stand against our technology." The communication ended. In the silence that followed, everyone looked at the overwhelming force arrayed against them. "Sir," said Cho Min-seok quietly, "we have 17 human ships and 8 Vorthak vessels. They have 50 advanced warships. The math doesn't work. Maybe not, said Commander Ryu Taijin, but we're not doing the math alone anymore. As if summoned by his words, new ships began appearing throughout the system. Cerulean Republic cruisers, Andromedian defense platforms, even ships from species that had never worked together before. This is Admiral Kexton of the Cerulean 4th Fleet, came a transmission. We're here to protect the children. Andromedian Medical Corps, reporting for duty, added another voice. Soon the communication channels filled with messages from dozens of species. The galaxy had seen the broadcast from Nubusan. They had watched human and Vorthak children playing together, and they had decided that some things were worth fighting for. In the children's ward, the young ones could feel the tension in the air. The adults moved with quick, worried steps. The lights sometimes flickered when the station's shields powered up. "Are we in trouble?" asked little Emma Park, the daughter of Dr. Park Minji. Kethmore, now the unofficial leader of the Vorthak. "Children, put a protective arm around her. Don't worry, the grown-ups will keep us safe." "But what if the bad ships try to hurt us?" asked Vexhai. "Then we help," said Tommy Rodriguez firmly. "My dad says when someone tries to hurt your friends, you stand up for them." "But we're just children," said Emma. Kethmore looked around at all the human and Vorthak children gathered in the ward. His young eyes were serious but not afraid. "We're not just children," he said. "We're the future, and the future doesn't give up." As the hours passed, more ships arrived to defend the station. The Zephyrians found themselves facing not just humans and Vorthak, but a coalition of species that had never united before. But the real surprise came from an unexpected source. In the station's engineering section, the older Vorthak children who had been cured months ago were working alongside human teenagers to modify the station's defenses. "If we redirect power from life support to the shield generators," suggested Nexstar, a 12-year-old Vorthak, "we can increase protection by 30%. "But that means less air and heat for everyone," said Sarah Kim, a human engineering student. "So we work in shifts," aid Nexstar. "Some areas get full life support while others get minimal. We rotate every few hours." The human teenagers stared at their Vorthak friend. He was suggesting that everyone should suffer a little so that everyone could survive. "That's actually brilliant," said Mike Chen. "You're thinking like a team player." Nexstar tilted his head, confused. What other way is there to think? And in that moment, the human children realized that their Vorthak friends truly had changed. They were no longer the conquest-driven species that had terrorized the galaxy. They were something new. As the 48-hour deadline approached, Commander Ryu Taijin stood on the bridge with his mixed crew of humans and Vorthak. Around them in space, nearly 100 ships from a dozen species waited for battle. "Sir," reported Communications Officer Park Sujin, "I'm getting a priority message from Earth. It's marked for your eyes only." Ryu Taijin read the message, then smiled for the first time in days. "What is it?" asked Captain Lee Do-yun. "Reinforcements," said Ryu Taijin. "It seems our little station has become the most important place in the galaxy. The President is sending the entire home fleet." Jextar let out a sound that might have been laughter. "The Zephyrians wanted to destroy us quietly. Instead, they have created the largest allied fleet in galactic history." In the children's ward, young Kethmore stood at the viewport, watching the ships move into defensive positions. He felt a small hand slip into his claw. He looked down to see Emma Park standing beside him. "Are you scared?" she asked. Kethmore thought about it seriously. "A little, but I'm more angry than scared." "Why angry?" "Because the bad people want to hurt us just for being friends." "That's not fair." Emma nodded. "My mom says when things aren't fair, you have to make them fair." "How do we do that?" "We show everyone that being different doesn't mean being enemies." Emma looked up at her best friend with determined eyes. "We show them that the galaxy is big enough for all of us." As the deadline clock counted down to 0, the children of two worlds stood together at the window, watching their protectors prepare for battle. They didn't know that this moment would be remembered as the birth of a new age. They only knew that they had each other. And that was enough. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it ended, the space around New Busan Station looked like a graveyard of ships. Twisted metal and debris floated where proud vessels had once sailed among the stars. Commander Ryu Taejin sat in the command center, reading casualty reports. 23 Allied ships had been destroyed. The Zephyrians had lost 37 vessels before retreating to the outer rim. But the real cost was in the people who would never return home. "Sir," said Communications Officer Park Soo-jin quietly, "we're getting messages from across the galaxy. News of the battle has spread everywhere." "What kind of messages?" "Support, mostly. Offers of aid, medical supplies, volunteers, but also questions. People want to know what the Zephyrians told them was true or false." Dr. Park Min-ji entered the command center, her medical uniform stained with exhaustion. She had worked non-stop during the battle, treating wounded from both sides. "How are our patients?" asked Ryu Taejin. "The children are scared but safe. The adult Vorthak who were injured are healing well." She paused. "Commander, we need to talk about what we discovered during the battle." "What do you mean?" "When Zephyrian soldiers were brought to our medical bay, I ran standard treatment scans. Their biology isn't what we thought." Minji activated a holographic display. "Look at their brain structure." The image showed a complex neural network with strange modifications. "These aren't natural Zephyrians," continued Minji. "They're heavily modified, enhanced for intelligence and emotional suppression. Someone turned them into perfect calculating machines." Jextar, who had been listening quietly, stood up from his console. "You mean they were victims too?" "I think the real Zephyrians were conquered long ago by something else, something that uses their bodies but strips away their ability to feel compassion or love." Commander Ryu Taejin stared at the brain scans. "If that's true, then we're not fighting the Zephyrians. We're fighting their conquerors." In the children's ward, life was slowly returning to normal. The human and Vorthak children played together as if nothing had happened, but the adults could see the difference. The children stayed closer together now. They shared their toys more freely. When one child had nightmares, others would comfort them. Young Kethmore had become something of a leader among both human and Vorthak children. At 8 years old, he was bigger and stronger than the human children, but he used his strength to protect rather than dominate. "Kethmore," called Dr. Cho Yuna from her research station. "Can you come here for a moment?" The young Vorthak approached with 2 human children following behind him like faithful shadows. "I want to show you something," said Yuna. She activated a screen showing brain activity patterns. "This is your brain scan from when you first arrived, when you were very sick." The display showed irregular, chaotic neural patterns. "And this is your brain now." The new patterns were completely different. More organized, more complex, with strong connections between areas that controlled emotions and decision-making. "What does it mean?" asked Kethmore. "It means you're not just healthy. You're different from other Vorthak. Better in some ways. More caring, more able to understand how others feel." Kethmore tilted his head. "Is that good?" "I think it's wonderful," said Yuna. "But it also means you're special. You and the other treated children represent something new in the galaxy." That evening, as the station settled into its sleep cycle, Corporal Nam Ji-hoon made his rounds through the children's section. He found Kethmore sitting by a window, looking out at the debris field where the battle had taken place. "Can't sleep?" asked Ji-hoon, sitting down beside the young Vorthak. "I keep thinking about the fighting," said Kethmore. "All those ships, all those people who got hurt. It's normal to feel upset after something like that, but I don't understand why it happened. The bad people said we were dangerous, but we're just children. We don't want to hurt anyone." Ji-hoon looked at the serious young face. "Sometimes, Kethmore, people are afraid of change. They're afraid of anything that might make their world different. But change can be good. Look at us." Kethmore gestured, to include all the sleeping children, human and Vorthak together. "We're different from our parents, but we're happy." "Yes, you are. And that's what scares them." "Will there be more fighting?" Ji-hoon wanted to lie, to tell the child that everything would be safe from now on, But Kethmore's large, intelligent eyes deserved honesty. Maybe, but if there is, we'll protect you. All of us will. Can I help protect too? How? Kethmore pointed to his sleeping friends. By showing everyone that different doesn't mean dangerous. By proving that we can all be friends. 3 days after the battle, a discovery changed everything. Dr. Cho Yuna was analyzing recovered data from a destroyed Zephyrian ship when she found something incredible. Minji, you need to see this immediately, she called. Dr. Park Minji hurried to the laboratory where Yuna was staring at screens full of genetic data. What am I looking at? Zephyrian medical records. They've been keeping detailed files on every species in the galaxy. Yuna scrolled through the data. Look at this. They have records going back thousands of years. Wars they started, plagues. They created entire civilizations they manipulated. Dear heavens, how many species have they controlled? All of them, Minji. Every major conflict in recorded galactic history has Zephyrian fingerprints on it. The Human-Centauri Wars, the Great Vorthak Expansion, the Andromedian Civil War. They've been playing us against each other for millennia. Dr. Park Minji felt sick. Why? Population control, resource management. They treat the galaxy like a farm, and we're the livestock. They keep us fighting each other so we never grow strong enough to threaten them. But why target the Vorthak children specifically? Yuna pulled up another file. Because the Vorthak were becoming too powerful. Their natural aggression and tactical abilities made them perfect weapons, but also potentially dangerous to Zephyrian control. The plague was designed to limit their population while making them emotionally dependent on conquest for psychological satisfaction. So they turned them into addicted warriors. Exactly. Until we cured their children and broke the cycle. In the command center, this news created an emergency session with leaders from across the galaxy. The holographic conference room filled with representatives from dozens of species, all struggling to understand the scope of Zephyrian manipulation. If this data is accurate, said the Cerulean Admiral, then every war our people have fought was orchestrated by the same enemy. The question is, what do we do now? Asked the Andromedian representative. Commander Ryu Taijin stood before the assembled leaders. We do what we should have done centuries ago. We work together. Easy to say, replied the Kepler delegate. Harder to do. Our species have genuine differences. Differences aren't the problem, said a new voice. Young Kethmore had entered the conference room, followed by a group of human and Vorthak children. The adults stared in surprise as the children approached the holographic projectors. Children shouldn't be in a military planning session, said the Cerulean Admiral. We're not just children, said Emma Park, stepping forward bravely. We're the ones you're all trying to protect. And we want to help, added Vexhai. Kethmore looked around at all the adult faces, some curious, some annoyed. You say our differences make it hard to work together. But look at us. He gestured to his mixed group of friends. I'm Vorthak. Emma is human. Vexhai is Vorthak. Tommy is human. We're all different, but we play together every day. We share food. We help each other with homework. We protect each other when someone's scared. It's not that simple, said the Kepler delegate. Adult relationships are more complex. Why? Asked Emma. Why does it have to be complex? The question hung in the air. The adults looked at each other, realizing they didn't have a good answer. Because we've been taught to be suspicious, said Ambassador Kim Seonho slowly. We've been trained to see enemies everywhere. By the Zephyrians, added Kethmore. They wanted us to fight each other so we wouldn't fight them. Commander Ryu Taijin knelt down to the children's level. What would you do if you were in charge? The children looked at each other, having a quick whispered conference. Then Kethmore spoke for the group. We'd make a rule. Anyone who tries to make friends fight each other is the real enemy. Anyone who protects children from any species is a friend. And if someone breaks the rule, asked the Andromedian representative, then everyone else stops them together, said Tommy Rodriguez firmly. Vexhai nodded. Like when bullies pick on smaller kids at school. You don't let them do it just because they're not picking on you. The adults sat in stunned silence. These children, without training in diplomacy or military strategy, had just proposed the most sensible defense policy anyone had heard in centuries. Out of the mouths of babes, whispered Ambassador Kim Seon-ho. That night, as the political leaders continued their debates, the children of New Busan Station created something that would become a symbol for the new galaxy. Working together in the recreation room, human and Vorthak children built a model space station out of building blocks. What should we call it? Asked Emma. How about New Hope Station? Suggested Kethmore. Why that name? Kethmore looked around at his friends, both human and Vorthak. Because that's what we are. We're the new hope that things can be different. As they worked on their model, adding details and improvements, the children chatted about their plans for the future. They would all go to school together. They would explore new worlds as friends. They would make sure no children anywhere in the galaxy had to be afraid of being different. They had no idea that their simple model would inspire the construction of dozens of real stations across the galaxy, places where children of all species could grow up together, learning that differences were something to celebrate rather than fight about. Outside the recreation room, Dr. Park Min-ji watched through the window with tears in her eyes. These children, human and Vorthak together, represented everything she had dreamed of when she first decided to help the enemy's young. They were proof that the future could be better than the past. They were the living, breathing promise that the galaxy's long age of manipulated conflict was finally coming to an end. And tomorrow they would wake up and continue building their better world, one block at a time. 6 months after the Battle of New Busan, the galaxy was at war again. But this time, it was different. For the first time in recorded history, dozens of species fought on the same side against a common enemy. Admiral Park Jin-woo stood on the bridge of the flagship Unity, watching the tactical display. His fleet contained ships from 23 different species, all working together with impossible coordination. "Sir," reported his communications officer, "the Vorthak strike force has successfully disabled the Zephyrian supply depot at Kepler 7. Excellent. And our allies? The Cerulean medical ships have evacuated all civilian populations from the target zone. The Andromedian engineers have restored power to 3 liberated worlds." Admiral Park Jin-woo nodded with satisfaction. This was how war should be fought. Not to conquer and destroy, but to liberate and protect. "Admiral," called his tactical officer, "we're receiving a priority transmission from New Busan Station." "Put it through." Dr. Park Min-ji's face appeared on the main screen. Behind her, the research station buzzed with activity. "Admiral, we've made a breakthrough. Dr. Cho Yuna has successfully adapted the empathy treatment for 3 more species. We can now help others develop the same emotional bonds that saved the Vorthak children." What does that mean for the war effort? It means we might not need to fight much longer. If we can treat the Zephyrian soldiers, we might be able to free them from whatever's controlling them. Admiral Park Jin-woo felt a surge of hope. "How soon can you have the treatment ready?" "We already have enough for a field test, but we'll need to capture some Zephyrian soldiers alive. Leave that to us." On New Busan Station, the children had grown in more ways than just physical size. Kethmore was now 10 years old and stood nearly as tall as many human adults, but his gentle nature remained unchanged. He was teaching a group of newly arrived alien children how to play a cooperation game when alarms began ringing throughout the station. "Don't worry," he told the frightened youngsters. "It's just a drill. We practice staying safe." But Corporal Nam Ji-hoon, now chief of station security, knew it wasn't a drill. His screens showed 3 damaged ships limping toward the station. 1 human cruiser and 2 vessels from species he didn't recognize. "This is Captain Oh Min-soo of the cruiser Dauntless," came the transmission. "We have wounded aboard and we're carrying refugees from the Zephyrian attack on Tau Ceti." "How many refugees?" asked Ji-hoon. 200 adults and 50 children. Multiple species. They've lost everything." Ji-hoon looked at his duty roster. The station was already operating at full capacity. Adding 250 more people would strain their life support systems to the breaking point. Bring them aboard, Captain. We'll make room. Within hours, the station transformed. Human and Vorthak families opened their quarters to refugee families. The older children, led by Kethmore and his friends, organized games and activities to help the refugee children feel welcome. "Are you really Vorthak?" asked a small blue-skinned girl from Rigel Prime. She had heard stories about the scary warriors, but couldn't believe this gentle giant was one of them. "Yes," said Kethmore, kneeling down to her level. "But I'm also your friend. Would you like to see my shell collection? I have pretty ones from 17 different worlds." Soon the station's corridors filled with the sound of children playing together, their species differences forgotten in the universal language of childhood friendship. But the adults faced harder challenges. In the main conference room, Ambassador Kim Seonho met with leaders of the refugee groups. "The Zephyrians didn't just attack our worlds," said Commander Veltar, a tall insectoid being from the Tau Ceti system. "They targeted our children specifically. Schools, playgrounds, family centers. It was systematic. They're trying to prevent what happened here," said Kim Seonho. "They don't want other species forming the bonds our children have created." "What can we do?" asked Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a human doctor who had escaped the Tau Ceti attack. "How do we fight an enemy that targets innocence?" "We protect every child like they're our own," said a familiar voice. Jextar entered the conference room, his massive frame somehow managing to convey both strength and gentleness. "The Bone Render speaks wisdom," said Commander Veltar with surprise. He had never imagined agreeing with a Vorthak warrior. "I am no longer the Bone Render," said Jextar quietly. "I am Jextar the Shield Bearer. I protect those who cannot protect themselves." As the refugee crisis continued, Dr. Cho Yuna worked frantically in her laboratory. The new empathy treatments showed promise, but she needed more data. More importantly, she needed test subjects. The opportunity came when a Zephyrian patrol ship was captured during a raid on their supply lines. 3 enemy soldiers were brought to New Busan Station under heavy guard. "I want to examine them before we attempt any treatments," said Dr. Park Minji. The captured Zephyrians sat in their holding cells like statues. They didn't speak, didn't move, didn't react to anything around them. Their black eyes stared straight ahead without emotion. "It's like looking at living machines," whispered one of the guards. Dr. Park Minji ran her medical scanners over the first prisoner. The readings confirmed her worst fears. These beings had been so heavily modified that almost nothing remained of their original personalities. "Can we help them?" asked Dr. Cho Yuna. "I don't know. The modifications go deeper than anything we've seen. It might be too late." But they had to try. The first treatment attempt failed completely. The Zephyrian soldier showed no response to the empathy enhancement. If anything, his vital signs became more stable, more machine-like. "We're not dealing with suppressed emotions," realized Yuna. "We're dealing with emotions that have been surgically removed." Then how do we reach them? The answer came from an unexpected source. Young Kethmore had been visiting the holding area with his friend Emma Park, bringing food to the guards. Through the observation window, he saw the motionless Zephyrian prisoners. "They look sad," he said. "They don't feel sadness," explained Corporal Nam Jihoon. "They don't feel anything. Everyone feels something," insisted Kethmore. "Maybe they just forgot how." That evening, against all protocols and safety procedures, Kethmore did something that changed the course of the war. He asked Dr. Park Minji if he could try talking to the prisoners. "Absolutely not. It's too dangerous. But what if they just need someone to remind them what it feels like to care about something? Kethmore, these aren't sick children who need healing. These are enemy soldiers. So were my people once." Dr. Park Minji stared at the young Vorthak. At 10 years old, he already stood taller than she did, but it wasn't his size that impressed her. It was his unshakable belief that everyone deserved compassion. 5 minutes, she said finally, with full security present and medical monitoring. The next morning, Kethmore entered the holding area with Emma Park beside him. The human girl insisted on coming along to support her best friend. They approached the first cell where a Zephyrian soldier sat motionless. "Hello?" said Kethmore softly. "My name is Kethmore. This is Emma." No response. "We wanted to meet you because we've never talked to a Zephyrian before. Are you from a nice planet?" Still nothing. Emma stepped forward. "Do you have children?" "We love children. All kinds of children." For just a moment, something flickered in the prisoner's black eyes, so briefly that the monitoring equipment barely registered it. "You do have children," said Kethmore with excitement. "What are their names?" The Zephyrian's lips moved slightly, but no sound came out. "It's okay if you can't remember right now," said Emma. "Sometimes when people are hurt, they forget things that make them happy. But the happy things are still there, hiding inside." Over the following days, Kethmore and Emma visited the prisoners regularly. They brought drawings made by other children on the station. They told stories about their friends and games and favorite foods. Slowly, impossibly, the Zephyrian soldiers began to respond, first with small gestures, then with whispered words, finally with tears. The breakthrough came when the youngest prisoner, barely older than a teenager, suddenly spoke in clear words. "My daughter. Her name is Zithara. She has silver eyes like starlight." Dr. Park Minji watched the medical monitors. In amazement, the prisoner's brain activity was changing, developing new neural pathways in real time. "How is this possible?" whispered Dr. Cho Yuna. 2 years had passed since the mission to the Galactic Core. The Unity Station, as New Busan had been renamed, now orbited Earth as the headquarters of the Galactic Alliance. Children from over 30 species attended the integrated schools built throughout the massive structure. Dr. Park Minji walked through the memorial garden, reading the names carved into the crystal walls. So many heroes had given their lives to free the galaxy from the architect's control, but they had succeeded in ways no one could have imagined. "Dr. Minji," called a familiar voice. She turned to see Kethmore approaching, now 12 years old, and nearly 2 meters tall. Despite his imposing size, he still moved with the gentle care of someone who understood his own strength. "Hello, Kethmore, how are your studies going?" "Very well, I'm learning about galactic history. Did you know that before the architects, many species tried to form alliances, but they always failed? Why do you think that was?" Kethmore considered the question seriously. "Because they were trying to unite governments and armies. They should have united the children first." Dr. Park Minji smiled. Even now, Kethmore's wisdom often surprised the adults around him. "Dr. Minji, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you think the architects were evil or were they just scared?" The question caught her off guard. "What makes you ask that?" "I've been thinking about what happened during the final battle. When Commander Ryu Taijin's team reached the control nexus, the architects could have destroyed them easily. But they didn't. They tried to understand why humans and Vorthak would work together." Dr. Park Minji remembered those tense days 2 years ago. The mission to the Galactic Core had been planned as a military strike, but it had become something entirely different. The breakthrough had come when Commander Ryu Taijin and his team discovered that the architects weren't conquerors at all. They were the last survivors of an ancient species that had been nearly destroyed by chaotic wars between their own people. In their fear and trauma, they had decided that the only way to prevent such destruction was to control everything. They were trying to save the galaxy the only way they knew how, said Dr. Park Minji. But their solution would have destroyed everything that makes life worth living. "That's what I thought," said Kethmore. "They needed healing, not fighting." The final confrontation hadn't been a battle at all. It had been a conversation that lasted 3 days, with representatives from dozens of species explaining why freedom and emotion and even conflict were necessary parts of life. The architects had listened. More importantly, they had learned. "Dr. Minji, do you miss the old days? When things were simpler?" She looked around the memorial garden where children from dozens of worlds played together under artificial sunlight. "Sometimes. But then I remember what we were trying to protect." In the education center, Emma Park stood before a class of mixed-species students, teaching them about the history of the Alliance. At 14, She had already decided to follow in her mother's footsteps as a doctor and diplomat. Can anyone tell me why the Treaty of Unity was different from all previous galactic agreements? She asked. A young cerulean raised her hand. Because it was written by children? Partly, yes. What else? Because it focused on protecting children instead of defending territory, added a Vorthak student whose shell was beginning to show adult coloring. Exactly. The Treaty of Unity was the first galactic law that put the welfare of young beings above the interests of governments. After class, Emma walked to her favorite spot in the station's observation deck. Earth hung below like a blue and white marble, peaceful and beautiful. Thinking deep thoughts, asked a voice behind her. She turned to see Kethmore approaching with 2 cups of hot chocolate, a drink he had discovered and fallen in love with during his first year on the station. Just remembering, said Emma, accepting the warm cup gratefully. Remembering what? The day you first arrived. You were so sick and we were all so scared of each other. Kethmore sat down beside his oldest friend. I remember you singing to me when I couldn't sleep. That lullaby about stars. You still hum it sometimes when you're working on difficult problems? They sat in comfortable silence watching their home planet turn slowly below them. Emma, do you think we did the right thing? Helping the architects instead of fighting them? Why do you ask? Some of the older students say we were naive, that we should have destroyed them when we had the chance. Emma considered this. Do you remember what you told me when we were little? About how everyone needs protection sometimes. Even big scary warriors, said Kethmore, smiling at the memory. The architects were the biggest, scariest warriors of all, but they needed protection too. Protection from their own fear. In the Alliance Council chambers, Ambassador Kim Seonho met with representatives from across the galaxy. The topic today was the expansion of the Unity Protocol to newly discovered species. The exploratory vessel Harmony's Song has made contact with 3 previously unknown civilizations in the Outer Rim, reported Captain Lee Do-hyun, now a senior exploration officer. All 3 species have agreed to participate in the Child Exchange Program. The Child Exchange Program was perhaps the Alliance's greatest success. Young beings from different worlds spent time living with families from other species, learning languages and customs and forming bonds that made future conflicts impossible. What about the hegemony worlds? Asked the Andromedian representative. Are they still refusing to participate? The hegemony leadership remains suspicious, said Kim Seonho. But their younger generation is pushing for change. We've received hundreds of applications from hegemony families who want their children to attend Unity schools. Time is on our side, observed Admiral Park Jinwoo. Every year, more children grow up believing that diversity is normal. Eventually, they'll be the ones making decisions. After the meeting, Kim Seonho walked to his private office where he kept mementos from the early days of the Alliance. On his desk sat a small drawing made by Kethmore and Emma when they were 8 years old. It showed humans and Vorthak holding hands under a bright sun with the words "Friends Forever" written in both human and Vorthak script. That drawing had been copied millions of times and distributed across the galaxy. It had become the unofficial symbol of the New Age. His contemplation was interrupted by his assistant. Sir, you have a priority message from the Deep Space Observatory. What kind of message? They've detected something approaching from beyond the galactic rim. Multiple ships, unknown configuration. Kim Seonho felt a familiar chill. How long until they arrive? At their current speed, approximately 6 months. Another test for the Alliance. Another challenge to overcome. But Kim Seonho no longer felt the old fear when faced with the unknown. Send word to all member worlds. Prepare welcome committees, not battle fleets. Let's assume these newcomers need friends, not enemies. In the children's quarters of Unity Station, bedtime stories were being told in 12 different languages. Human parents read Vorthak fairy tales to mixed groups of children. Cerulean teachers sang lullabies that made everyone drowsy regardless of their species. Kethmore had volunteered to help with the youngest children, those who were just learning to walk and talk. Tonight he was reading to a group that included 3 species that had never met before this year. And the little star realized that being different wasn't something to be ashamed of. He read from the picture book. Being different was what made her special. Are we all special? Asked a tiny Rigelian child, her blue skin glowing softly in the dim light. Yes, said Kethmore gently. Every single one of you is special in your own way. Even when we make mistakes? Asked another child, especially then. Mistakes are how we learn to be better. As the children drifted off to sleep, Kethmore dimmed the lights and sat quietly in the corner. Tomorrow, these children would wake up and continue building the future that his generation had started. They would face new challenges, make new friends, solve new problems. But they would do it together. Dr. Park Minji found him there an hour later, still watching over the sleeping children. You don't have to stay, she whispered. The night staff will take care of them, I know, said Kethmore softly. I just like watching them sleep. They look so peaceful, so safe. That's what we fought for, isn't it? So children could sleep peacefully. Kethmore nodded. Dr. Minji, do you think they'll face dangers like we did? Probably. But they'll face them together, and they'll have something we didn't have when we were their age. What's that? They'll have the knowledge that different species can love each other. They'll never have to discover that friendship is possible. They'll grow up knowing it's normal. As they left the nursery together, Dr. Park Minji thought about the long journey that had brought them here. It had started with a desperate plea for help from an enemy warrior. It had continued through battles and crises and moments when hope seemed lost. But it had led to this, a generation of children who saw the galaxy as their playground, who made friends without regard to species, who solved problems by working together instead of fighting. The galaxy still had challenges. There were still species that preferred isolation, still individuals who promoted hatred, still problems that seemed impossible to solve. But now there were also children who had grown up believing that impossible just meant they hadn't found the right solution yet.